Hello, my name is Kiarra Lynn Smith. I'm a visual artist and writer. This video is a presentation of my Phillis Wheatley box. It is the first box of my Black Biography Boxes series, which features portraits of ancestors of African descent. So it's basically like a heritage box slash a box to honor their memory. So, while I show you the box, I will tell you a little bit about Phillis Wheatley from the top of my head that I can remember. So I will start with the top. The image I use for the box is of Phillis Wheatley writing with a quill pen, writing a poem with her finger to her cheek, trying to think of something very creative to write. There's also a book on this side. This portrait of her, I painted it from a portrait that another artist drew. The artist was Scipio Moorhead. He was an African who was enslaved by a Reverend Moorhead, and he is commissioned to create a drawing of Phillis Wheatley. He also wrote poetry as well. So I decided to use this piece, or this image, because it's one of my favorite images of her. She looks very delighted to write. I made the background with green, with circles, and little pearls, or little beaded, rounded beaded pearl things, or beads, because I thought she was very elegant and classy. I made it green. So Phillis Wheatley was brought to Boston from West Africa. Now there's some debate of whether she came from Senegal or elsewhere, but you can narrow it down. She came from West Africa to Boston. She arrived July 11th, 1761. She was around 8 years old, and she was very sickly, of course, because she had been through the Middle Passage. She was enslaved by the Wheatley family. The Wheatleys had twins. They had a pair of twins, Nathaniel and Mary. They were about 18. And Phillis was purchased because she was supposed to be an aid to Mrs. Wheatley, who was aging, even though she was in her early 50s, and Mrs. Wheatley's husband was in his late 50s. So I don't know what her name was before she came to Boston, but they named her Phillis after the ship she arrived on. So on the front, I have Phillis Wheatley. On the side, I have lines from her poems, two lines from one poem. To the right, Honorable, I want to say William, Earl of Dartmouth. Right here is an excerpt from her poem, An Hymn to the Evening. So I put it in black, and I wrote it in gold. So wherever you turn, it sparkles everywhere. I chose the color blue for the middle passage. So when Phillis Wheatley arrived and was enslaved by the Wheatleys, she was tutored, so I guess even though she was enslaved, it could have been much, 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 much worse. Even though it was already bad, but it could have been even worse. She was there. She mastered the English language in about 16 months. She was tutored by the Wheatleys, particularly Mary Wheatley. She learned English. She learned Latin. She studied different poets and everything, especially Pope or Milton, but most likely Pope. So she started writing poetry at around 12, but the earliest poem I could find in a book was written when she was about 14 years old. So this is an excerpt from her poem. To the right, Honorable William, Earl of Dartmouth. I also put patterns on the side. Patterns that I felt inspired to create. Like this one, it reminds me of this house I saw on the internet in South Africa where they had all of the patterns on their houses. When I have boxes like these, I put poetry or the vocation. So her vocation was poetry. So I put the person's vocation on there. Did I show you though? And I put the bottom as blue for the water. It's almost like a libation. So continuing with the story. So Phillis Wheatley, even though she was enslaved, she got a very good education. Probably even better than some of the women in Boston in her time. The Wheatleys lived on King Street, so they are very influential people. So there were prominent people coming in and out of their house, like reverends, everybody. So she was in contact with many different people from many walks of life. She had some friends because the Wheatleys also enslaved other blacks. There were about 1,000 blacks enslaved in Boston at the time, I think, and about 20 of them were free blacks. So she wrote and she wrote and she wrote her little heart out. And a lot of people didn't believe that she wrote her own work because she was African. So she had to stand before a group of prominent men in town, and all of them were white. So she had to stand in front of them, prove that she wrote her poetry. They asked her a series of questions, and she proved that she wrote what she wrote because she was a very intelligent woman. She became an internationally famous poet. She married a black man named John Peters, and after that he had odd jobs everywhere. But of course, during that time, like, there's only 20 free blacks in town. Like, what are you gonna do? So they couldn't really support themselves, and she was very sickly. She died at age 31. She did have about 3 children, but all of them died. She died giving birth to her last child, which was a girl, I think. But her poems can still be read today. As you can see. I believe that she did write poetry about her life in Africa, even though there's only a few poems that mention her life in Africa, which is on being brought from Africa to America. There's a little hint of that, and some to the right, Honorable William Earl of Dartmouth. But I believe that if she did write something about her life or enslavement, that it was either censored or she just wrote it in private, or perhaps it was discovered and she was afraid she would get in trouble. But she lived an exceptional life despite the condition that she was in, and that is why I have this box, in order to honor her and remember her. So if you would like this box in particular, you can email me, or you can order a box of your own, a personalized ancestry box. I don't just do boxes of people of African descent. If you want your own ancestry box and you're not of African descent, I can do one for you as well. The same price will be $60. So if you want to learn more about Phillis Wheatley, you can go to the library. You can look her up online, but I would rather you go to the library to support the library. Here's a book that I have of her. It's a very excellent book, and it has some of her poems in it. So, thank you all for watching this video, and have a beautiful day, and look forward to seeing more videos on more of my Black Biography boxes. Thank you. Bye-bye. Should you, my lord, while you peruse my song, wonder from whence my love of freedom sprung, whence flow these wishes for the common good, by feeling hearts alone best understood, I, young in life, by seeming cruel fate, was snatched from Afric's fancied happy seat. What pangs excruciating must molest, what sorrows labor in my parents' breast. Steeled was that soul, and by no misery moved, that from a father seized his babe beloved. Such my case, and can I then but pray others may never feel tyrannic sway? Phillis Wheatley, to the Right Honorable William Earl of Dartmouth, His Majesty's Principal Secretary of State for North America, & Co.